Joining us now is Ann Coulter, the New York Times best-selling author. Her current book is Resistance Is Futile. Thank you for coming. Thanks for coming on the show, Ann.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you, Howie.
I'm so glad that you're saying that they're coming here for welfare, Ann. I mean, I say it, but so few people are willing to speak the truth about this matter. I mean, that not 100%, but the vast majority of them are going to end up on welfare.
And even if it isn't specifically housing aid and food stamps, they're taking advantage of free public schools, of free public health, thank you, Obamacare, and, of course, even before that, the emergency rooms. Out here in L.A., wow, there's a lot of traffic. Sure would be less traffic and fewer traffic accidents with about 10 million fewer illegals on the roads that are now given driver's licenses in California, you probably know. There are all kinds of services that people just get being in this very wealthy country, which isn't going to be wealthy if we turn ourselves into another failed Latin American state.
Yeah, and Victor Davis Hanson, I've just been reading from his column today. I mean, there is a certain irony here that they say they are fleeing lawlessness, and so they want to come into the country illegally, and like all of their brothers and sisters who are here, they don't want to obey any of our laws. So what kind of legal, lawful society do they think they're going to have for very long if they flood us with their lawlessness?
No, that's right. Flood us with all kinds of cultural dysfunctions that they have in their societies. I mean, this is why I always point out that the biggest immigration restrictionist group in Washington, D.C. Isn't called, Latin Americans drive drunk and litter a lot. It's called Numbers USA. In small numbers, in small bites, we can take people from very discordant cultures, and over time, maybe not the first generation, maybe not even the second generation, but assimilate them, acclimate them to freedom and thinking on their own and not littering and not driving drunk and not molesting little kids. But when you take in millions of them, as we have been, oh my gosh, have we been, and now we just have this never-ending flow, more illegals crossing the border now than there were last year, since the caravans aren't being stopped, so they're just going to keep coming. That is going to change our culture. I mean, what do people think? If at what point is it not America anymore, and are we just El Salvador?
Yeah, I agree. And do you think the president is serious about stopping this caravan? This I call it the gravy train.
Well, I'm very nervous about this. The president is excellent on talking and making promises and telling us what he wants to do. But when it comes to actually doing it, that's where everything seems to fall apart. This is, by the way, why we wanted a wall. And maybe President Trump didn't understand why that became the chant of his campaign. I mean, he talks about, as I've pointed out before, he talked about a lot of things when he came down that escalator. And then he'd go out to these 30,000-person focus groups of Trump supporters. They're the ones who created the slogan of his campaign, Build the Wall. They're the ones with the Build the Wall hashtag who were chanting it at every single rally and continue to do so to this day. Trump may not have understood what was so important about that rally cry, about the theme of his campaign, but we understood. We don't want to have to keep going through these caravans every 3 months. For the rest of our lives, Trump isn't going to be president forever. We need a permanent barrier on our southern border. Yeah,
I agree. And I think, Ann, that this is one of the reasons why the percentage of black support for Republicans and Hispanic support for Republicans is increasing. I mean, this is not a positive issue for anybody who's in the country, pays taxes legally, speaks English, and feels that they have a stake in, or their families have a stake, their descendants have a stake in the future of the country. who is this good for, to be having open borders and to be allowing the country to turn into a flop house? There's no upside.
No, that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. One of my lefty friends in L.A. was just telling me yesterday, talking to the Mexican maid, that she was totally for Trump, and this sort of surprised the lefty friend, who asked her, why are you for Trump, and why do you want the wall so much? And she said, it took me 10 years to be here legally. These people are just running across. Yeah, and of course, if I am sure they realize more than the average American, the more people competing for those maid and nanny jobs, the more their wages go down.
Right. Well, you've had stories in the L.A. Times, I'm sure you've read them, about how some of the people who were illegal immigrants 2 generations ago have now fled Southern California because they can't take it anymore, and they're being underbid for for all the jobs and the trades. Not to mention they're being overwhelmed by the crime and the disease that's being brought in by these hordes of illegals.
I have a wonderful story from the L.A. Times in Adios America about a family. I think it was 8 daughters crossed from Mexico, crossed into this country illegally. Only one stayed behind, having baby after baby paid for by the government. She took fertility drugs to even have more kids. But anyway, the sisters all escaped Southern California, or at least several of them did, moved to Kentucky, and they said they moved to Kentucky to get away from all the Mexicans in Southern California. They said it's just like living in Mexico. Everybody speaks Spanish. It's the same dysfunction. We come to Kentucky, the streets are clean, the lights work, everyone obeys the law. This is what we were coming to. Yeah, it ruins it for everyone, including the ones who were fleeing these societies and got here to begin with. Maybe it's unfair that they got here before the other ones did, but, it's unfair that people who live in Latin America can walk here, whereas people in Bangladesh and Uganda can't walk here. Yeah, life is unfair, but at some point you have to save the boat, or the lifeboat crashes and nobody gets saved.
Yeah, this is what do you make of these attacks on Donald Trump as he is somehow responsible for the shooting at the synagogue, even though the guy is all over social media talking about how much he hates Trump, but somehow it's Donald Trump's fault.
I know, but they always do this. Nobody was blaming Bernie Sanders when his supporters shot up that baseball field. I mean, I guess a lot of people, at least on our side, you won't hear that on MSNBC, but I assume a lot of people on our side are pointing that. But no, this is what they just. This is the media trying to get Trump to bend to their will and say whatever they want him to say, when they want him to say it. This is exactly what they did with Charlottesville. I have a chapter on that in my book, Resistance Is Futile. Of course Trump was right. There were good people on both sides. There were bad people on both sides. Oh, boy, have we seen that in the following year. Not only have Confederate and other statues of Thomas Jefferson, of Abraham Lincoln, have been Christopher Columbus, have been torn down, defaced, moved, melted down. So, yeah, of course some people were out there protesting because they didn't want the statues being taken down and they weren't part of some alt-right group. And we've also seen Antifa running wild, running through the streets with masks, smashing store windows, beating people up, whom they take to be fascists, i.e. a Trump supporter.
I.e. wearing a suit and tie in one case in Berkeley, right? They talk about, racial profiling. They were profiling him by his neckwear, beat the crap out of the guy. Yeah.
That's right. No, but what drives them crazy is they used to be able to boss around conservatives. I mean, Rubio apologized and Jeb apologized and Romney apologized, and why won't Trump bend to our will? I will say that is one of the greatest things Trump is doing as president, not giving in to the PC outrageous demands of the media to apologize for things having nothing to do with him.
Yeah. What I've been talking about, Ann, too, is, when you have no laws for a certain segment of the people who are here, i.e. illegal aliens, pretty soon you don't have laws for anybody. And so you have the people like this Caesar Sayoc or this guy, to a lesser degree, Bowers in Pittsburgh. I mean, in the old days, these guys would have been locked up in mental institutions,
Yes, and it's worth pointing out that at least in the Cesar Sayoc case, we do have another problem of immigration. That he's half Filipino, and not
well,
only
he's also
I mean,
fake. He's a fake Indian too. He's this week's fake
right,
Indian.
he's like your friend Elizabeth Warren. But it just simply is an historical fact that in this country, political violence has historically come from the left. In other countries, there's a lot of political violence. So if you bring in people from other countries, the same thing with the welfare consuming and the drunk driving, we are bringing in those cultures. Liberals figured all these third world immigrants we're dumping on the country would always be for them. But it turns out, sorry liberals, some of them will end up being like Cesar Altiera Sayoc and be Trump supporters. But this is not a traditional American behavior. I mean, this is more like Sacco and Vanzetti.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, too, what do you have to do to get locked up in South Florida? You and I are familiar with that area. And I mean, the Parkland shooter, he was a one-man crime wave, and nobody did anything about it until he finally, killed a bunch of people. This is the same way with Cesar Sayoc Jr., I mean,
yes.
How many crimes did this guy have to commit? He's just walking around.
No, this past week is an excellent advertisement for, as Trump said, concealed carry and the death penalty, and Cesar Altiera Sayoc is a great advertisement for the three strikes laws.
Yeah, and yet he's being criticized for saying that it might have been a different outcome at the synagogue if they had an armed guard. But I mean, that's common sense, isn't it?
Of course, or just armed parishioners. This is why people on our side support concealed carry when you don't know who has a gun. But lots of people, doesn't mean everybody has a gun. Lots of people like to use guns. It's fun to use guns. I like to shoot. I like to have a gun because I'm utterly defenseless out in the world without a gun. You never know who's going to have a gun, and concealed carry does tend to cut down on those things.
Yeah, I mean, there have been shootings at churches and places of worship before this, and sometimes the police go into these, and I've gotten texts from people today saying that they've had cops come to their churches, and the cops say, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but maybe it would be wise if somebody was assigned to have a concealed weapon at the at church on Sunday or whenever.
Sure, just let the concealed carry permit carriers come. Remember, there was that wonderful woman at a Colorado Springs church. I think she was a black gal. And I think she may have been an off-duty cop, or she was just, an armed citizen. But some lunatic came running at the church, trying to shoot people in the parking lot, trying to break into the church. And she said a little prayer, pulled out her gun, and shot him dead.
Right. I just noticed in the Bronx last week, there was a guy jumped over the counter of a bodega, and the guy came up with the equalizer, the owner, and shot him dead, and they didn't indict him. Which is a sign of progress in the Bronx.
For New York.
Yeah. All right, Ann. Thanks for being with us. Look forward to talking to you next week. The title of your new book, Resistance Is Futile. I'm Howie Carr.
Good.
We're not showing wall-to-wall video of that caravan itself because whatever you think about the people in it, there's no evidence they are, as the administration is suggesting, some kind of invading army infiltrated potentially by terrorists looming on the U.S. border.
The idea that we are under threat from these poor, desperate people is just absurd. I mean, it is just the bottom of the barrel politics that he's engaged in.
Well, those dismissals come as new reports tonight that yet another caravan is forming, originating in Honduras. As for the government's response, yesterday's Washington Post reporting there is a sinking feeling among the Department of Homeland Security officials that more caravans are yet to come and that they will only get larger. But to the left, this is nothing more than a scare tactic. Maybe Trump is even forming the caravans himself. Well, at least according to Morning Joe.
This caravan that Donald Trump keeps talking about, that Fox News keeps talking about, that people on the right keep talking about as some last-ditch, desperate, sad, pathetic effort to, again, use white people, non-white people, to try to scare white people into voting for Republicans. It's over 1,000 miles away. What? Wait, what? They're over 1,000 miles away and they, what? Wait?
There's some babies.
Wait, they may not be here until December. Wait, hold on, what?
Oh my God, that's so not funny. Joining us with her thoughts is Ann Coulter, author of the new book, Resistance Is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. And do you think the left here think that we just shouldn't be concerned at all about a massive caravan barreling toward the U.S. border? Do they think it's just a political hype job from the president, or a combo?
Well, they definitely want these caravans to keep coming. They've been coming a long time. That attack on white people being, and that's what we're afraid of. For one thing, this country is barely majority white anymore. We're still a country, though, and all of the people in this country, again, barely majority white. I don't know how much longer they can keep up this taunting of, ooh, scared white people. We're allowed to decide who comes in and who doesn't come in.
Well, and the fact that CNN says, well, we're not covering it. We're not like covering it wall to wall.
Right.
I imagine that's in part a political calculation by some of the other networks, because I think most people see this, and including Hispanic Americans, African Americans, and they see, gosh, how is this fair when all these other people have to, apply and spend money applying and do it the right way? I think it comes down just to a basic sense of fairness, not that we're not compassionate.
Right, and I mean, also fairness, I hear Trump saying this, fairness to immigrants who do it the legal way, which is very difficult, but how about fairness to Americans? This illegal alien child molester is costing Utah taxpayers more than $1 million for his cancer treatments, more than $1 million. I'm sorry, that's money that should be going to an American cancer patient. He's sitting in jail and getting full, free cancer treatment. This obsession with not just the liberal media, but we really see it with the liberal media, with everything going on far, far, far away from us. We have troops all over the world. We have troops in Afghanistan, troops in Syria. We're not paying attention to what's happening right on our border. It's as if France in the late 30s became obsessed with a war in Central America, and that's all we talk about. And no, we're not going to report on what's happening right next door in Germany. No one mentioned that. No, this is our problem, what's happening at the border. There's a reason that Americans, maybe Trump and his administration, don't understand why the chant during his spectacular, miraculous campaign was build the wall. But the people making that chant had a reason for it. And that's so we don't have to go through this fighting over a caravan every 2 months. And, they slip through and, oh, well, what can we do? I mean, there's so many things the president can do besides build the wall himself. He is the commander-in-chief. We're building walls all over the world, just not to protect our country. The military can't really do anything standing on our side of the border. What are they going to do? Shoot the invaders?
No. Well,
but they could invade. They could go in 10 yards into Mexico. We didn't ask for Iraq's approval to go in. We didn't ask for Afghanistan's approval to go in. This is actually, other than sitting on oil, most of these Middle Eastern countries, they're not going to kill Americans. Lots of Americans are being killed in drunk driving accidents, killed or molested, and not to mention sucking up all these benefits like the child molester in Utah.
And none of the media outlets who are bemoaning and emoting over the caravan, embedded reporters, do many stories about those who've been victimized by illegal aliens in the United States who are criminals. And I want to play something for you, and I'm sorry to torch you on a Friday night, but John Kasich was out there this week, and he's just, of course, Mr. Never Trump, but he's outraged that people wouldn't respond in a more compassionate way here. Let's watch.
It could easily have been all of us, that we're in the caravan, that we're marching north, trying to save our families and save our children. We've got to start putting ourselves in the shoes of other people. Let us reach out to those who have less, and let's stop putting up walls around ourselves and not understanding the plight, the trouble, and the problems of others. It is not right, and the Lord doesn't want it.
Well, the Lord didn't want him as the GOP nominee either. It's a shock, Ann, that he didn't win the nomination by putting the concerns of other nations before, the middle class, blue-collar workers in the United States.
Yes, that's just what I was thinking as you were playing that. Well, what a surprise. That guy didn't win. Look, Americans are very compassionate, but our compassion has worn thin. This is like a con man or a gypsy, you know, appealing to us. Oh, the poor children. We have our own poor people. We need to protect our own country, our own citizens, which, sorry, Joe Scarborough, we're barely hanging on to majority white, so stop saying this is white against the brown throngs. That isn't what's going on. We have an obligation to our own citizens who have really given it the office
of all backgrounds.
way too long.
These people who are obsessed with color, the most racially obsessed people in the United States are coming from the left today, because we're fighting for the American people of every background, every religion, every ethnicity, the American citizenry. And I want to play one quick thing for you. The truth sometimes slips out. A member of the invading horde, as a friend of mine here likes to say, admitted we do have some undesirables in the crowd. Let's watch.
Criminals is everywhere, okay? It's criminals in here. I mean, it is.
Then he said, but most of them aren't criminals. But like, okay, at least he gave us that. I'll give him that.
Yeah, I mean, of course there are criminals in this crew, but even if there were no criminals, they are a mass of very, very poor people. What is a country other than the people who live in it? I mean, there are, what, 7 billion people in the world? I'm sure they'd all love to come to, and they keep taking polls in other countries. Lots of them would like to move to the greatest superpower in the world, the greatest country in the world, unless we give it away through immigration, with a massive welfare state. We have to draw the line someplace. So most Americans were saying, how about right now, about 20 years ago? We finally had a president who was saying, how about we put an end to it now? But he doesn't seem to be following through on it. I hope he will.
Got to. He's got to. He said he's going to close the border if necessary to these migrants, and obviously 800 troops. But they're basically in a facilitator helping mode. But Ann, it's always great to have. It's always great to have you on. And thanks so much.